Hey guys, and welcome to Sasquatch Theory. In this episode, I interviewed George, who experienced Sasquatch vocalizations in Arizona and had an encounter with an unknown creature. When people think of Arizona, they probably think of desert and the Grand Canyon, but there is a lot of timber in the state and for many miles. Large herds of elk and deer roam these areas of the United States along with many other wildlife species. The large basins and canyons and thicker timber would be all a cryptid needs to stay undetected by humans. If you have a Bigfoot encounter you would like to share, please contact me at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. If you guys would like to help support the channel, you can join the membership or purchase some merchandise from my spread shop website down below. It would really help me out, and I appreciate the people that have helped me out in the past. Alright guys, let's dive straight into this next Bigfoot encounter from the state of Arizona. Okay, George, if you would, tell me about your encounter from the very beginning and what you were doing, what happened, and what transpired after that.
Okay. My wife and I decided to go camping, something we hadn't really done much of, and so we didn't have a whole lot of camping gear. We just had, I bought a little porta-john type of deal and two tents, and so we went ahead and we drove up to uh, the Sitgreaves Forest, which is up on the rim of it's called the Mogallan Rim in Arizona. So we took a drive up there. It's about 2.5 hours from where we live, and we decided just to kind of drive around. It is forest, I mean, big pine trees and some oak trees,
Mm-hmm.
and so it is a big forest, and it's actually like at almost it's almost 8,000 foot level, which is, it's a higher part of Arizona. But anyways, we were driving around checking out stuff, and then it was rainy kind of day, and then it started kind of getting late, so we thought we'd find us a camping spot. Well, I don't camp in campgrounds. I like to camp out and be, away from people. And so we went ahead and we went down a forest road, and we drove for quite a ways, and then we didn't really see anything we liked, so we backtracked about 5 miles. So we knew there wasn't anyone near us. Not by far. There wasn't anybody out there, as a matter of fact, because we were kind of like in the middle of the week. So we went in, found us a spot, and kind of set up whatever, what little stuff we had, put our tents up, and we had a couple little dogs with us that, those are uh, our pets that we had with us, and we went ahead and we were just kind of enjoying it out there. It was still raining, so we were in our tent. We set it up in the rain, and then finally, once it quit, decided to go on ahead and make us some dinner. And so I was out there cooking, and my wife is sitting in a chair with hanging onto it. One of the dogs is small, kind of lap dog, and she kept telling me, she goes, "These dogs are kind of acting weird." She said, "It's just," she said, "like, just keep looking out into the forest and growling and stuff." And it was, I said, there's elk and deer running all around out there. I was probably seeing that kind of stuff. So I didn't think much of it. And she decided she wanted to have a fire, so we didn't, like I said, we didn't have a whole lot. So she had this old dull hatchet, and she got a piece of wood that, or tree that was dropped on the ground there, and she was beating on that for a while, trying to trying to cut it into fire logs, and it was making quite a bit of racket. You could hear it echoing all around us, when she's chopping away at it and everything. And anyways, that night became unsuccessful for doing any kind of fire. We made dinner. It was late, and I was like kind of tired. Around 9 o'clock, we decided to go to bed. And so we went, jumped in the tent. We had a air mattress in there, and so there was enough room. It's like a little 4-man tent. You couldn't even stand up in this thing. So we went ahead and set ourselves all up, and the dogs got them all bed down and everything, and went to bed. And it was a there was quite a bit of moonlight. I can't really say it was a full moon. I'm not really sure, but I know that you could see, it was actually almost like it was almost seemed like light on the tent. So we're sound asleep, and then all of a sudden, about it was 3 o'clock in the morning, give or take. I'd looked at my watch. I heard this enormous scream that was like something that it was unbelievable. The volume of this scream was beyond. We hear elk out there bugling all the time. It that is nothing compared to how loud this was. It was so loud, and the thing was is that it was kind of like it wasn't a low moaning kind of scream. It was a little higher pitched scream, and it was one long continuous scream that whatever it was had to have some enormous lungs because it was just crazy. And I sat up and I'm hearing this thing, and it caught me by surprise. It didn't really, I can't say it scared me at first. I was just trying to figure out what was going on. And uh and so my dogs, which are generally pretty brave, they just sat as still as could be. I mean, they were just dead quiet, no barking, no growling, no nothing. They just sat there. And so it stopped, and at that moment, I woke my wife up, and she was like out. I wake her up, and I'm like, telling her, honey, get up. There's something out there. And so she's waking up, and she's like, what? Is it a bear? And there are quite a bit of bears out there. And I know, and I said, no, I don't know what it is. And right about then, it started belting out another big old scream. And my wife sat up out of the bed, and she looks at me and just kind of like mouth, like, what is that? And I'm like, I don't know what it is. I said, it's out there. This went on for quite a while, as I'm going to say a good 10, 15 minutes of screaming like this. And, and then it stopped, and so we sat there for a while and trying to figure out, what are we listening to? Even are we in any kind of danger? Being out there, there's nobody around. We're out there in the middle of the forest, and what the heck is, what's out in our camp area? So we got to the point where she was like, "Well, I gotta, she needed to go and pee," and so did I. And I was like, "Well, I'm not going out there." And she's like, "Well, I'm not going out there." So we sat there for a while, and then finally decided, all right, we're gonna go outside and kind of look around. Said, well, let's put our shoes on and let's tie them. Make sure that that if we have to run, we can run. And I was carrying, I had a 9 millimeter pistol with me, which that won't even do any damage to a bear, but I believe in having some kind of protection for something. So I stepped out of the tent first, and when I did, I noticed I could see pretty well. I mean, I couldn't see like it was daylight, but because of the moonlight was so bright, I could see. And so I stepped out first, and I told my wife, I said, "Well, it looks safe out here. I don't see anything." And the other tent was with her little bathroom there was set up right next to the other one. I said, "Come on out," So she came out and she went in that tent, and I stood out there watching the whole time, looking all around the forest from what I could see because it was kind of thick in there, and I couldn't see nothing. Didn't hear anything. It was quiet. It stopped raining. So we got done, got back in the tent, talked a little bit more about what we'd heard. and decided, well, let's just go back to sleep. And, if it starts again, then, we'll kind of just be alert, and uh, make sure, we'll try to be as safe as we can. I mean, obviously, what are you going to do? But nothing happened, so the next morning we got up early and started talking about what we'd heard again, and we're getting breakfast, going and stuff. Well, we were there for 2 days, so we were going to stay another night. And I decided, heck, if it does it again, we'll be here, So I decided after breakfast to take one of my dogs out for a walk, and walk out towards the where I heard the screaming coming from. And I got about, no, must have been a good 150 yards or so away from where our camp was at, in a little thicker area. And when I got out there, I noticed there were these trees, that probably 4, 6 inches in diameter, about 12 feet long, inside of, it was kind of thick in there, there were these trees, and they were all stood up like a kind of like a teepee. And I didn't know what the hell. I was like, is somebody out here trying to make a shelter or something like this? But it didn't seem like it was big enough inside, because the trees were standing at a pretty steep angle. There was one laying on the ground there, and I grabbed it to see if I could lift it. I couldn't even lift it, and they were saw cut, So I'm like, well, shoot. I'm kind of looking around, and I was like, I don't see no stumps anywhere. Where'd these trees come from? Somebody had to bring them in. I'm thinking, boy, son, he really went through a lot of trouble to bring these in here and stand them up like this, because, it'd take at least three pretty strong guys to be able to carry one of these trees. They still had the limbs on them, you know. And so I just kind of thought that was strange. And then pretty close to that, I saw something else that I don't know if somebody was out there. There's a lot of people that camp out there. So there was like a bunch of rocks, and they were positioned like in a rectangular shape, and they were almost looked like kind of like a grave site sort of thing. And I was like, wow, this is really weird. But I saw that, and then I was like still trying to figure out what the heck all that was. And then I found a couple of trees that probably, I'm going to say, 3, 4 inches in diameter. And they were live trees. They weren't dead trees. They were snapped off about 5 feet off the ground. These trees, somehow or another, were broken over. These are pine trees, they're pretty stout. So I was like, you know, it really takes something to be able to snap one of those trees like that. So there was a couple of trees like that, and I walked back to camp, and I told my wife, I said, there's something out there that I think you ought to come out there and take a look and see. It's pretty strange. I don't, I've never seen this. So she come out and took a look and everything, and we both agreed that somebody could have done this, but at the same time, breaking those trees, that's not something that I couldn't see how you could do it, and there was no way you could get a piece of equipment in there, because some people were logging up in that area, but it was a little ways away. They couldn't get in there. It was too thick all the way around there. It's like, what the heck? So we kind of enjoyed our day and everything, and day, started getting later and everything, and we were able to get a fire going and stuff. And then, around nighttime, we were thinking, oh boy, I want to see what's going to happen again tonight. So I was out there making dinner. I had a little barbecue, and I'm making dinner and stuff, and the dogs were just growling and restless like crazy. My wife had this big old flashlight. It's like a big old lantern thing, and she'd shine it out into the forest, and the dogs would calm down, and everything else would calm down. My wife said, there's something thrashing around out there. I keep hearing it. And I'm thinking, the stinking elk are probably running around us, and it could have been that. I don't know. But every time she turned that flashlight on, it would all stop. And she didn't see anything. As a matter of fact, the dogs would even stop growling. And this went on all night. And I was like, couldn't figure out what the heck was out there thrashing around. But we went ahead and we went to bed and didn't hear anything that night, but it's mostly stuff that we heard what we heard, the screaming the first night we were there, but the things we saw were kind of strange. I couldn't make any sense out of it. That second morning, my wife decided she was going to go out and kind of just look around and everything. And then she comes back and she says, "I seen something that you need to come and take a look at." I said, "I can't figure this one out." So we went out go see what the heck she was talking about. And she had found a tree stump. And it was a big tree stump, was the root ball and everything. It wouldn't fit in the back of a pickup truck. It was pretty big, so it was heavy, and
Mm.
it was sitting on top of a boulder. And I was like, how the heck do you get something that big and that heavy and place it on top of a boulder that was like about 3.5 feet tall? It was a big boulder, and it's just sitting there. And that one was kind of strange to me also. And then we saw another one out there, and I was like, hey, look, there's another one. So we saw two big tree stumps that were sitting on top of boulders. Couldn't figure that out at all. So I had just some things that we saw out there. Never seen anything like that before. We were kind of new to camping in that area, so I'd never seen any of that kind of stuff. And that was it. Our little camp session was over. We packed up and came home and talking about this all the way. And when we got home, my wife right away, she's on her laptop and she's looking for sounds of the forest, that are native to Arizona, where we live, and couldn't find anything that sounded even close to what we had heard. And like I said, that sound was just like it was just unbelievable, unbelievable. Uh, I guess after I kind of got scared a little bit, about what we had heard because we didn't know what the heck it was. So I come home, we're listening. I come and I get on my computer and I'm doing the same thing she is. We can't find nothing. And she come over and she said, she says you got to look up that searching for Bigfoot. I'd been watching that show that comes on, and I was like, yeah, what the heck, and so then I found out they were called a BFRO or whatever, and I got on their webpage and I'm kind of like looking on there, and I was like, wow, they got all kinds of stuff on here, and so they have recordings, vocalizations, and everything. So I'm listening to a bunch of them, and nothing really sounded like what we had heard. Most of it was kind of like a low moaning kind of sound, uh, uh, and what I finally found a recording that was made in Washington State, and it was dead on. Except that the only difference was is what we heard. It was the scream was long carried scream. It was one without taking a breath. I guess what I'm trying to say. And so that was the other thing that kind of freaked me out. I was like, how the heck could something have so much air? It had to have big old lungs to be able to do something like that. And besides how loud it was. So I called my wife over and I said, come here and listen to this. So I hit that recording and she just looked at me and she's like, that's it. That's it. That's what we heard. And so, I went ahead and I wrote up my story of what had happened out there and sent it to the BFRO, with my phone number, attached because, you give them your information. And within about 45 minutes, I got a phone call from them. And I was so surprised. The guy, he was an investigator that lives that lives out here. And I got talking to him, and he was starting telling me some stories. And what I didn't realize was where we were at up on the rim there is where the most that kind of activity in Arizona. That's where the most of it happens upon the Mogallan Rim. And so he was explaining some of the things we saw. He was kind of explaining, what they believe it is, that it's these structures are like, uh, I guess that's marking their territory, and basically we were, being harassed, and kind of. And I'm like, okay, so he got our information and everything, and he even went out there and did a little investigating. I gave him the coordinates, the fire road we were on and everything, the best of my knowledge that I could give him. And he didn't actually find our camp area or even find the structure. Uh, Probably during that time, was like, I'm working and everything. So, and it's like 2.5 hours. Otherwise, I probably could have just drove out there and met up with him and actually took him and showed him these things. But that didn't happen. But he did an investigation. He got back with me and called me back and let me know, what he had found out there. And told me he didn't find our camp spot or even the structure or the stumps that we had seen. He didn't see any of that stuff. But he was pretty sure that what we had heard was a Sasquatch. And that's and I was like, well, what the heck is I mean, I had an idea what he was talking about, but I wanted him to tell me what they were thinking. And so that's when he, telling me it was kind of like a primate type thing, large animal, you know, uh, man-like, hairy, all that stuff. But I, I, I couldn't say because I didn't see anything. I just saw what he was calling, marking territory, and then what we heard was there's just no explanation for what we heard. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I've gone back and
Mhm.
I have found so many now that I've looked into this more. I found footprints, big footprints. I didn't have anything to cast with, but I found some big footprints out there, and I have found a lot of different structures and everything. That's you got to walk out, back in. You can't even drive where I'm at. But I've walked back in there, and I have found some pretty cool stuff, but never have heard anything again. I carry a digital recorder with me now when we go camping, but that was pretty much the experience we had, and still no real explanation for it. I just, I go kind of ready now. So if something else does happen, at least I can hit the recorder. I mean, we don't tent camp. I have a trailer now, so I think I feel a lot safer, being out there.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much what happened. And
Okay.
uh,
George, I appreciate you sharing that with me. Did you hear the screams higher or lower in elevation from you?
I don't understand. What do you mean higher or lower? That
W-
we or like if they were in a higher mountain area,
Yeah, were they
we
higher
were
up or lower?
no, we were as high as you can go.
Oh, okay.
When you're up on when you get up on the rim, you're climbing. You're climbing, you're going up, and it's kind of hilly once you get to the top because it's almost like in some places it's like a plateau that just sticks up out of the ground. It's in some places it's 2,000 feet straight down. It's when you're up on the rim and you're on the rim road, they call it, and
Mhm.
you drive that rim road, it's a straight drop off on one side, and then on the other side is the forest. So it's kind of unique in its way, that once you're up in there, but it's about I'm going to say 7,800 feet in elevation.
Mhm.
There are in where we were camping, there are 5 lakes within a 10-mile radius that are big enough you can fish out of them and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of getting really popular now, especially after the pandemic and everybody started camping now. And you have to go further out to not to, I don't like I like kind of being out there without neighbors, let's just say. I kind of like to be out there and just uh, not have a whole lot of people real close to us because, for one, that's what I'm out there for too, is because, I like to let my dogs loose and they run around and everything. They don't bother anybody. But that's kind of the kind of camping I like to do. We don't do campgrounds.
Mhm. And there's a
So
lot of forest out in Arizona. I think it's like, or it was one of the last frontiers, and I heard the forest goes all the way into New Mexico.
it does. Actually the rim is they would say the western side of the White Mountains. So it goes straight across east to west, and it goes up into what they call the White Mountain area, which is where you have like places like Show Low, Pine Top, places like that. And the elevation there, there are some areas there that are much higher. There's a couple mountains up there. There's one that's like 10,000 feet, that you can drive up to the top of. And I've been all over that area. It's a Apache reservation up in that area too. Uh, the Indians got a lot of stories. Matter of fact, the last time I went camping with my up in that area, not in the White Mountain area, but where we normally camp up on the rim there. My stepdaughter has some friends, and they're Indian from that area, and I got into a conversation with one of the guys there, and I asked him about that, and I says, "Hey, so what do you think about Bigfoot?" And he just kind of looked at me, and he started telling me, he says, "We believe what do you call him, shift shapeshifter or something like that." He was calling it.
Hmm. Yeah.
He says, "Yeah, we know about it." He says, those stories, he says, they go back in my family way, way back. He says, there's they've seen a lot of strange things out here, living. It's called Apache Sitgreaves National Forest. So there are a lot of Indians in the area, and yeah, he started telling me some of his stories, of strange things, that hearing stuff and seeing stuff, and I was like, really? And he goes, yeah, it's all over this place. It's not anything new. He goes, we just don't like to talk about it much unless you ask us. He says, like you're asking me right now, so I'm telling you, what I know. And I was like, well, okay, well, I'm gonna keep on coming up there because it's the best place to camp in my opinion. I love camping there. I don't desert camp. I live in the desert. I've been here all my life, and I'm here to get out of the heat. So, that's why we go up there where it's a lot cooler. Because it just like you're in 110, 112 degrees here where I live. In Gilbert, and we're like a suburb of Phoenix. It's hot, so we head up to the hills.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wonder if the
Yeah.
shapeshifter deal is the same as the orbs and the invisibility cloaking.
You know, he he elaborated a little bit about that kind of stuff, and I don't know. I think he felt a little uncomfortable. Not necessarily that he was telling me, but I don't think he felt. It was. I think it was kind of.
It's
It
taboo to
spooked.
talk about. If you talk about
Yeah.
it, it'll happen. They'll show up.
Yeah. So he was, but we did talk for quite a while. Matter of fact, him and I, I have a side by side, because I've I've come a long way from two little tents. I got a toy hauler and a side by side. That's our trailer that we haul up there. And so, we were up in the, driving around in the forest and stuff like this, and he's a real nice guy. Like I said, he's a friend of my stepdaughter's. Him and his girlfriend come up camping with us every now and then. So now that I've gotten to know him a little better, uh, I've went ahead and I popped the question. What do you think about this? And then that's when he started telling me, about, they believe it's a shapeshifter. So I was like, okay, I've I've Arizona has quite a few reservations, you know, and a matter of fact, I worked for the city of Phoenix, and uh, I worked with a few Indians, and there was a lot of other things that in other places that had heard little stories. And because this thing that I'm telling you right now about this screaming, that's one story I seen with my own eyes. There's a river on the Fort McDowell Reservation, and it's in a place called Red Mountain. There's a Red Mountain. That's what they call it. It's a big red mountain. It's a sacred mountain to the Indians. And I was driving around that on the reservation, going to a water treatment plant, and all of a sudden, coming up out of the river, a real steep bank, I saw this. It looked like a dog. That's what it looked like to me. It looked like a dog with a big long snout on it, pointed ears. Listen, I'm not crazy, okay? This thing was walking on its hind legs, and it had short little front legs like a dog, but it was walking on its hind legs, and it walked across the road in front of me about, it was probably maybe 50 feet away as I was driving my city truck around. And I had a guy with me, and he was reading a magazine, and I'm like, what the heck is that? And he's looking up, and right about that time, there's a curve in the road there. So he didn't get to see it. So I floored the truck, and I go around the curve to see what this thing was. And the mountain is like a straight up, and how that thing got up that mountain, I don't know, but it was gone. And so when we got to the plant, we're telling the people there about it, that what I had seen. I was like, I saw this thing, and that guy was telling me, he says, "You saw the chupacabra. We've all seen it." And I was like, "Was it walking on its hind legs?" He goes, "Yeah, it's walking on its hind legs, about 5 feet tall." I said, "Yeah, it was." And like it's got teeth on it and everything. He's like, "Oh yeah, we've seen it." And I was like, "You got to be kidding me. You guys have seen this thing." That's like, well, yeah, well, it's not something we all talk about, but I'll tell you right now because you're telling me you saw it. Yeah. So I don't know what that was, but it looked like a darn dog. It had pointed ears. It had a big snout on it. It was about, I'm gonna say about 5 feet tall, walking on its hind legs, which it walked really well, and its front legs seemed shorter. And it walked right across the street, right in front of me, right across the road, right in front of me. And this is not like a, this is it's more of a high desert area. There are trees there. They're not pine trees, but it where I was at runs along an active river. It's called the Verde River, which is one of the rivers that actually brings water down into the valley where we live. There's two main rivers that bring water down into the valley where we live, and the Verde River and the Salt River. This was right on the Verde River. I was on the reservation when I saw that thing, and now that's something I saw. I didn't hear anything. I saw that, and that's pretty freaky.
Did you see any eye shine?
It never looked at me.
Hmm.
It was looking. It was because it was crossing the road in front of me. It was looking where it was going, basically, and and just from what I can remember and see, I don't even know if it saw me. Tell you the truth, I would have thought that I'm driving a big utility truck, a big 1-ton truck is what I was driving around that road. But and seeing it and then telling my partner, about it. So I, like I said, I floored that truck and took off as fast as I could to where it was, which was not that far, but the road curved there. So it it crossed it crossed on the other side of the curve, and that's why it went out of sight for my friend to be able to see it. And when I got around the curve, I stopped the truck and we looked at the mountain where it had gone across because you're hugging that mountain on this road, and that mountain went straight up, and I was like, how the heck did that thing, it just disappeared. I said, how did it go up this thing? There was no other place it could go, because you know it couldn't have run back across the road because I would have seen it because it would have been back in sight. The only place it could have gone was go up that mountain. And that mountain, according to me, from according to Indians, there, you're not allowed to climb that mountain. Right? It's a sacred mountain to them. As they have rituals up on top of that mountain. There's like a cable that runs up alongside that mountain that they use to hang on to when they go up there, and it's called Red Mountain. And they're the only ones that are allowed up on that mountain. You're not allowed. Uh,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
sacred land there.
yeah. Well, the city had a water treatment plant there on leased land, and that was the only reason why I was allowed to go on that land because otherwise, where I go, you have to go. There's a gate there and everything, and there used to be a guard there, but then they just chained the gate closed. We had a key to the lock, so we could drive back in there because uh, we worked there, so that was the only reason. But we were supposed to stick to the road and not allowed to to go out there running around looking at things, because all of that up in there, they're it's all off limits to you, you know.
Yeah.
But it was something else I saw that was pretty strange. I actually saw that one, I was like, what the heck is that,
Hmm.
and that one still sticks in my mind because I have no idea, I've kind of looked. There isn't a lot of some people try to describe or even say a chupacabra. I don't know if you've ever heard that one.
Yeah, I actually got a report the other day from Eureka, Missouri, and the lady described it the exact same as you, same height and same
Really?
look. Yeah, so they seem to be
Holy
all over the
crap.
place.
So you've heard of them?
I've heard of them on like TV stories and encounters from people, things like that. Um, are there skinwalker stories from that area of Arizona?
Well, there probably are, but because, like I said, well, first of all, is I'm retired now, so I'm not, I'm not around the people I used to be up in that Fort McDowell area. So the only Indians that I've been able to talk to are the friends of my stepdaughters, and we finally got to that point where our friendship has grown to that point where the guy will talk to me, about stuff like that. I mean, when we go camping, we talk about all kinds of stuff, but that's a little more personal. So, so the last camping trip this year, as a matter of fact, is April. Is Yeah, it's usually like around April is when we finally we're able to go in camping because they close a lot of the roads because, believe it or not, we do get some snow here, and it snows in all that area up in there, and then the roads turn muddy, and so until all of that dries out, they don't let anybody in. So so around April time, is when we were up there, and that's when I popped the question. And so, I'm looking forward to the next time we go camping. I want to ask him more because that was on the last night we were there. So, we didn't get to talk as much as I would like to have, and ask him more, and possibly even take him to some areas that are up there where I know I can find structures, because I've made it a point to drive around and walk out into the forest and everything, and I know where there's stuff, and I go out there like the following year, and it's still there. Some of these areas that I find, the structures are still there. So whether they're pranksters or not, I don't know. You'd have to you got to walk out there quite a ways, and if you're going to go through all the trouble, well, then you did. But one thing I did when I found the footprints, which there were a lot, one thing that I did find uh that to me, I don't know how someone could do this, because I didn't have no way to cast any. I did take some pictures, but pictures don't show the footprint as well as it could. I did size the footprint with my foot next to it, and it was probably almost 2 times longer than my foot, which I'm like a size 10 and a half. So it was almost 2 times the length of my foot. And the stride was crazy. I would literally have to jump to the next footprint, and the feet print weren't like a person walks, where you have your, left and right foot, you could tell, because one's on one side and the other one's on. These feet print were in a straight line, and that was another thing that kind of, okay, this is different. The feet print are in a straight line, but they were not side to side. And then the stride was pretty long, and there was a lot of them. It had rained, and so the impressions were pretty good. I could see the toes, I could see the ball of the foot. I could see the heel. I could see all of that. But I took pictures, and the pictures, unless I actually sat there and kind of told you, here's the indentation, to describe what you're looking at, you can't really see it. But when I do that, I guess you can see it better. But,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah, it
yeah,
don't show up too well on a camera. I think
no,
casting it would be the best way to go. I wanted to ask some questions about the screams. Did they seem like they were directed towards you and your wife?
yeah, I would say, I
Mm.
would say so. Uh,
Okay. They did get
being
closer eventually, huh?
Well, this is the thing, is that where where um where I walked to, where I found the trees and everything, because I walked past that a little ways, it was like a straight, not a straight drop. It was a good, you could walk down this thing, but it's like a canyon area, and at the bottom, it's there's a creek down there that runs off to one of the lakes, which is would that would probably carry water to what they call Bear Lake. There are spotty areas of water down in there, and so if it was yelling that direction, it probably would have been echoing more, because it's like a canyon type, thing. So I do think it was screaming at us. That's what I think. You
Mm.
know, I honestly cannot say that I've ever heard anything that loud. It was like you were at a concert, listening to it on big concert PA speakers. That's how loud this thing was. It was unbelievably loud,
Yeah.
and there was no one out there.
Do
There
you
was
still
absolutely no one out there.
Yeah. Do you still have access to that BFRO link of the audio clip, or do you have to be like a member?
Oh no, you don't have to be a member. You can go right on. You can go right on the BFRO webpage
Mm.
and look up the different vocalizations on there.
Well, if you
The
can
only
find the exact one, send me a link to it, and I'll tag it to this video
Oh,
in the
okay.
description. That way, people can hear what it sounded like. I do want to mention that it seems like the dogs were in tune with what was going on around them, and they knew what was out there.
Well, that's what they tell me. Since that time, we acquired another dog. Actually, I lost one dog last December. Was one of the dogs that was with us, but we also acquired another dog. He's a Belgian, what they call a Malinois. So you know, I I know better than to let him out. You know, because the stories I've heard, that if a dog goes out after it, it ain't coming back. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the,
Yeah.
the, for something like that. And I'll tell you something else that we saw, and it wasn't. I want to think, is that when we were coming back from that? No, it wasn't. It was a time before we were up there, up in that same area and everything. My wife and I, we were out because we were just exploring more. I didn't even have a truck. I was driving a little Honda Civic, and I pulled off the road once, and we were down, and we found this area, and it was scattered with bones. And I don't know what the heck. There were bones all over that area of like animals. And then I found like some. There were two. No, there were two deer that were half torn to pieces. The fur was still on them. A lot of the insides were all gone and everything. One of them still had the head on it, but they're literally ripped apart. And then my wife was looking up. She goes, "Look, there's another one." And it was probably about 50 feet away. There was another deer. I thought that was really weird. I thought maybe it was a place where, a deer gets hit on the side of the road. That's where the rangers take them and just dump them, or whatever. But that's not what they do. They donate them, to these shelters, because it's good meat, if as long as it's not, bloated and spoiled. But there were bones all over this place, and I wanted to ask that friend of my daughter's. I wanted to ask him if he knew about that place, because it was right off the road, kind of went downwards, and we went back in there a little ways. It was the road was kind of muddy, so I didn't want to go too far back in there. And it was there was like a bunch of trees and everything. And So we were just kind of like taking a break, and I looked and I said, "Whoa, there's a bone right there. I wonder what the heck, you know." And then there's another bone and another bone, and then we started finding bones. All that whole area was just covered with bones, and then we saw the deer that were not, they were ripped apart, literally, uh, just ripped apart. You know, there were still pieces of them on two of the carcasses, and then the other one was about half of it was there. The whole back half of it was gone, but the upper half of it with its head and its neck and everything was still there. You know, and that could have been from, a mountain. You know, there's mountain lion up here and everything. That could have been from that, maybe. I don't know. I just thought that was pretty strange.
Yeah, a predator boneyard. I've had people send me videos like that in the past. A guy from Colorado sent me a few videos of a boneyard, and there were elk, coyotes, ducks, all kinds of stuff scattered all around, and it was a lot of bones. So definitely keep
Yes.
an eye out for that, and let me know if you find anything else.
Yeah, that and that was one of the first things we seen, but I'm just like new to all of this stuff, because I've hunted, years ago I used to hunt all the time. I used to hunt in what they call the North Rim, which is the northern part of the Grand Canyon, and never ever saw anything like that, Of course, I never slept in a tent before either. I had a camper on my truck, and then for a while I drove a van, but I never slept. This camping trip that we took was the first time I ever slept in a darn tent. And probably after that year, I told my wife I didn't feel comfortable, uh, uh, you know, as far as being safe for her, especially after reading a few things, because there are some stories that he throwing branches and rocks and stuff like that. Well, a tent's not going to hold up to that, So that's why I decided. I told her, I said, you know what, we're just going to get us a trailer. And so, with a trailer, you obviously got to buy a truck and all that. So, and I did. I bought a truck and a trailer, and that's what we started camping in. Feel a lot safer that way. And there's a restroom, and you got water and all that good stuff. So it's kind of glamping, they call it now. But hey, it works for me. I feel a lot more secure in that thing, than I do camping in a tent. Although I don't think even a camper would stop something that strong.
Yeah.
You've probably heard more stories than I have. I've never heard a story of something like that attacking somebody and doing damage that way.
I just took a
Um,
story from Hot Springs, Arkansas, and apparently it dragged them out of the camper. So you're never safe out in the brush.
oh my God. Well, I'm loaded for bear,
Mm.
uh, because, like I said, where we camp up there, there's a lot of black bear up in there, and like 3 years in a row, we had bear come into our camp, and we've been, now, sometimes our kids, well, all my kids are adults, and I have grandkids, but they all come camping with us. And so, we set up a big old camp area and everything. And we've had, bear. And so I've come a long way from carrying a 9 millimeter. I carry a 44 now, so, and, we're definitely ready for something like that, because I had a bear challenge me, coming into my camp, and it was, what are you going to do? I was standing between it and our camp, where I had, like I said, my grandkids are running around and stuff, and I was standing there. All I have is a 9 millimeter. You're going to piss him off. You better hit him with all 16 shots, and hope that he still doesn't, continue. But he challenged me. He was throwing dirt in the air and everything else, and then he turned around and walked away. I was like, boy, not this day, I guess. I was pretty lucky that day, I felt. And then after that, I told my wife, I said, no more with this stupid little thing. So, I got a 44 Magnum, and it's got bear loads in it. So I don't know what that would do to something that big. You know, it might stop them. I don't know. But,
Better than nothing, right?
yeah, better than nothing. I mean, I'll definitely hit. These are 300 grain bullets. I definitely hit them. I wouldn't. I would never shoot at something. Even if I had a gun in my hand, whatever, which I do carry in the force because of the bears. But why would you want to kill something like that? I wouldn't, if it was trying to harm me, even if it was throwing rocks at me, I would just try to get away from it. I wouldn't do anything like that. But if it grabbed a hold of me, that'd be a different story. Or showed its aggression towards my wife or any of my family. Well, that's a different story. But I really don't think that you're going to see anything like that if there's a big camping party. I don't think you're going to see anything like that.
Mm.
It's just my wife and I, and all the stories that I've read of people up in that area. One woman was up there with her husband in a camp in a like a motorhome type thing, and it was just the two of them. And she said, out of the woods, a big old branch came flying. It ripped the mirror right off the side of their camper while she was sitting there reading a book, inside the camper and everything. And they got harassed pretty good. But I never hear any stories about, well, there was 15 of us and we were all camp. I've never heard a story like that. It's always been like, one or two or maybe three people, if that. At least up where I camp is, pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's good to carry though, just because there's a lot of missing people, and it's good to not
Yes.
take any chances.
No, and I've watched a lot of videos, and I saw, because I watch more YouTube than anything else, because I'm not just I'm just not into watching the garbage that's the movies today. I just nothing that I like to watch anymore. So I watch a lot of YouTube. I got some channels that I watch. Some guys up in Utah. They're like they go out and they rescue. They're what do they call them? Like mountain rescue. Well, it's not really even that, because they're tow trucks. They go off road and they go way back, because like in Utah you have the Moab and all that kind of stuff. So I watch all of these guys, and and when I saw your channel, and I was like, oh, what is this one? And that's when I started listening to all the stories, and I was like, oh my gosh! I said, that's how I got hooked up with you on the, I don't know if it, which uh, when you actually aired what you did. I was just listening to it, but you put your web page, and that's where I got it from. I was like, well, I'm gonna go on ahead and the story that I sent you is the one that's off of the BFRO. I went back because my story's still on there. You can find it on the internet.
Hmm.
So I went on there and I just copied and pasted it and sent it to you that way, because here it is. That's to the freshest of my memory that I had at that very moment, other than other things. I think I sent you the second email that I sent you when I told a story to my family, and my dad told me his story. That was pretty. My dad saw it. That's what he told me. He said he saw it, and my dad was not a jokester, not a prankster. He's not. My dad was always really kind of not. I'm not gonna say, he's pretty. My dad was pretty serious most of the time. He wasn't that kind of a person that would joke around with you or anything like that. But yeah, he told me his story, and it was kind of confidential. Uh, he said after it happened that he was about 5 years old at that time, and he said they did not talk about it after they saw it. And that was in California. He said they did not talk about it. They absolutely, and that would have been like in 1930. My dad was born in 1925, and when he told me this, he was already. My dad was probably like 92, 93 around that time, and yeah, he after I told her, because some of the family were just like, really, and I'm like, look, guys, you don't have to believe me if you don't want to. I'm just sharing this with you guys, but I know what I heard. And that's when my dad says, I want to tell you something. He says, I've never told anybody this, never. He says, I've never even told your mom. And then he told me his story. And yeah, he was a little guy. He was with my grandmother and my grandfather. They lived in tents back then, because they would actually put a front door on a tent. They would build their own homes. Back then, they followed, they followed the crops, because they were all pickers. My grandfather was like a foreman for a farmer out there, and he used to kind of like share part of the earnings of what they were picking and stuff. And my dad said he was about 100 yards away, and he says I saw it really, really clear. He said it was big. He said he was huge. He was kind of like a grayish black color, and he was big and hairy, and said he looked like a big gorilla to me. He says, and my grandfather was, he had a shotgun near him and trying, telling my dad to stay quiet, stay down as they had the door open to the tent, to let cool air in because it was warm out. And they just kind of laid down and they just kept their eye on it. And it's like my dad told me that story, and I was like, uh, that one took me, but yeah, he told me, he says, I didn't hear nothing, son. He goes, but I'm gonna tell you, I've seen it. And he goes, that thing's real. I was like, okay, Dad.
Yeah, that happened in Arizona as well.
No, that was in California.
Okay, California.
Yeah, my dad was born here in what they call Buckeye, Arizona is the name of the place. And then they went to Imperial, California, a place called Nyland. And there's some mountains up and around that area up in there, and that's like back, I don't know, maybe still now, that's like the agricultural capital of the world. There's a lot of, a lot of the farming and the crops come from that area in California. You get a lot of the Colorado water goes in there, but yeah, that's where they were at. And there was he said there was some like kind of mountains in the background of where they were at, because my grandfather kind of picked a nice area for them to where they set up their camp, because that's basically, what their home was like. They would move on. They would just, back then, my dad was, they were still using horses and wagons. I mean, seriously, they were still using horses and wagons back then. It was a long time ago. And he said him and my grandmother would throw all of the stuff in their wagon and everything. They had this horse that would pull it, and they'd go to the next area where they were going to set up their home. And my grandma would build most of the home, and then my grandfather would show up with the rest of his brothers and sisters. They would all show up, and then they would make their home, and that's what they did. And during that time, though, because my dad was second oldest in his family of the kids, none of the rest of his brothers and sisters had been born yet. It was real early in his life. Like I said, he's 5, 6 years old. He said that he remembers the best he could, but he one thing he did remember, he did remember seeing that, and he described it. And I always wanted to show him some pictures, because, well, obviously my dad's not watching YouTube or anything. I wanted to show him some pictures. Dad, did it look like this or that or whatnot? But what he described to me was pretty much what you see on the internet. So
Yeah.
yeah, he
Okay.
said he saw it.
Well, I appreciate you for sharing that with me. One question I have, one more. How far away, like how many miles was the Chupacabra from the Bigfoot vocalizations that you heard that one night while camping?
Oh, gee, let me see. Okay, so
You don't have to be exact, but I mean like 10 minutes, 15 minutes,
oh no, no,
10
no,
miles.
it's a lot farther than that. It's
Okay.
on the Verde River, so we're talking like it's probably, I'm gonna say, somewhere between 60 and 70 miles away.
Okay.
Where I saw that, that's in it's still kind of desertous. There's still like mesquite trees and all that kind of stuff. There's cactus and whatnot, but a lot of salt cedar and a lot of mesquite trees in
Okay.
in that area where that's at.
Do you
And
feel
then
like it was connected in any way, shape, or form?
no, I think it's just something totally different,
Mm.
totally different.
Okay.
Just it is just, to me, just just one of those things. I mean, how many people actually see stuff, like that, you know?
Mm.
Well, obviously everyone that worked at the plant saw it. Well, I'm not talking like 100 people. There's only a small group of guys that were working there. It was like four guys that were the mechanics there on that water plant. that worked there, and then actually there was another guy that worked for me as a supervisor, and we had to stay out in the desert one time. We had a leak in the pipeline because there's a big old long pipeline that goes all the way into Phoenix from there. As a matter of fact, that plant is no longer. They've actually since demolished it. And I was telling this some guys there that were from the water department that had to sit out there all night. They were spending the night out there, on this leak. And I told them, I said, you guys just make sure you close your doors and stay in your truck. Don't be sleeping out here on the ground and everything. It's like the Chupacabra is going to get you. And they kind of looked at me and they were laughing. I was like, what are you talking about? And I was just about to tell him the story, and the guy that worked for me started telling the story before I did about what he had saw. And I said, you seen it? And he goes, yeah. He goes, and he started telling me what part of the road he was on. And I said, you got to be kidding me. He goes, yeah, over there where the road curves up by the river. And I said, yeah. He said, yeah, I saw it. So apparently, and everybody said it was in the same place. It wasn't in any different area. It was always in the same darn place on that roadway that this thing crosses the road.
Yeah, that's freaky.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you wanted to go there, you can't go there
Hmm.
because, first of all, the plant has been now destroyed and it's on reservation. It's a sacred mountain. And so, if you're an Indian, you can go there, but uh, if you're not part of the tribe, you can't even go in there now just to kind of, if you wanted to like investigate that and look at it. No, you can't even get close to it.
Yeah, I
Crazy.
wonder if like the digging caused that in the area.
I don't know. I know that right near where that's at, um, the what it is the river there runs east to west, meeting up with the Salt River that actually runs south, and so along that river, um, there are a bunch of well sites. They would pull water out of the river, which is like natural filtration through the sandy rock and everything, and then the water would get pumped to the east towards the water plant, and then where that mountain is that I'm talking about, there was actually a tunnel that was blasted through that mountain long, long time ago. I'll tell you how old that plant was. That plant was so old that the first pipeline that they brought water in was made out of redwood. That's how old that plant was.
Yeah.
It it been there for quite some time. Yeah, as a matter of fact, down City Hall, they have a piece of the pipeline as a display, which is a redwood pipeline, and with metal bands around it and everything. That's what they had. And actually, I even walked through that tunnel when we had it was an inspection, so to speak. So we stopped the water going through there, and I walked inside that tunnel, and that was pretty freaky, because it goes straight through that mountain, and it came out. I'm not really even sure because I didn't walk all the way to the plant, so I'm not really sure. But there's an area there where then what they call the raw water gets pumped up into the plant and then starts going through the filtration process. Where they start removing all the solids and all that other kind of stuff and making the water, clean and drinkable before it hits the pipeline, and they would send it to Phoenix. So
Hmm.
yeah, pretty crazy.
Yeah. All right, George. Well, I appreciate you for sharing your story, and I think that pretty well covers any questions that I had. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add to your story, or is that pretty well
Yeah, that's
everything?
that's about it. I'm thinking, if I see anything else, now that I have your what do you call it, your email,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm able to get any pictures or anything like it, because I'm going camping here again in a couple weeks. We're heading up in that area, and now getting late into the camping season, there'll be less people there because everyone's in school now and all that kind of stuff. So there won't be as many people. And my wife and I, we usually we'll go up like on a Tuesday or on a Wednesday. We go up in the middle of the week, and we can stay as long as we want now because neither of us work anymore. But
Mm-hmm.
we're going to be heading back up in there and try my luck at some. They just released some big old giant trout up in there's the all those mountain lakes. They have the hatcheries there, and they just released a whole bunch of of the biggest trout I ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
They just released like about 2,000 of these trout all through those mountain lakes. So I want to be out there poking around and seeing if I can catch me some fish, you know.
Yeah.
But I'll keep my eye out.
Okay. Yeah, you'll have to let me know if you find anything, and have a good time when you're up there, and I hope you catch a big fish.
Yeah, if I see any more structures, you know, I mean, well, like I said, I got your email. You know, it's like it doesn't have to be anything all that big of a deal, but I'd send you some pictures,
Yeah.
you know, or if I get a chance to talk to this guy, you know, this Indian guy, he might have some stories he might want to share. I don't know. Like I said, they're Indians out, at least the ones out in this area,
Mm-hmm.
they keep to themselves quite a bit. You have to kind of get to know who they are
Yeah.
to be get them to talk to you. Yeah,
You'll have
that's
to see
just the
what
way
you can
they are.
find, and
Yeah,
maybe he'll have some stories for you.
or possibly take me to some places that only they know
Yeah.
on the reservation. Yeah, if you're with them, you can go, but if you're not with them, you can't.
Right.
You know, depending on where they're taking you, of course. If it's an area that you know you don't want to get caught on the reservation because you know they'll come and they'll arrest you. You know, they have the tribal police. You know, they'll come in there and they'll get you. And
Yeah, they're sovereign nations.
yep, you don't want any of that. So
Mm-hmm.
better to befriend somebody, and if you're lucky enough that they want to share with you and even share that kind of stuff with you, you know.
Mm-hmm.
This guy, you know, he I know he had some stories. I know he had some stories.
Yeah.
So okay.
All right, George. Well, you have a good one, and I really appreciate your time, and hopefully we talk again in the future.
Well, thanks for your time and appreciate and enjoy talking to you.
Yeah, likewise, and you take care, sir.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
All right, George, I appreciate you for getting in contact with me and logging down your report. Have you seen a Sasquatch in Arizona? Please contact me. I would like to talk to people who have seen these creatures close up. So if you're out there listening, get a hold of me at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. But yeah, that goes for anyone in North America. I would like to hear your story, and if you've seen these things up close, I'd like to get as much detail as possible. So if there's anyone out there who has really encountered the Sasquatch and interacted with them multiple times, I would really like to get a story like that. But yeah, I also appreciate everyone for tuning in tonight and listening to the channel. That really means a lot to me. So thank you very much, and I do appreciate you. So thank you. All right, I hope you guys all enjoyed today's episode, and take care until the next one.